Hey everyone, Brian Lawrence here with another episode of the Selling Bliss podcast. I'm so excited to have Doug George with me. Doug, how you doing, man?
I'm good, Brian. How are you?
I'm awesome. Thanks so much for joining. You and I, over the last year, have traded a bunch of messages on LinkedIn, but now we get to talk in person. Super excited about that. And I think you've had such a interesting journey, and it's been fun to see this evolution over the last year as you've talked about, being an athlete, having athletic endeavors, having your own business, and now moving into something different. So really excited for you to share that journey. But would you maybe describe for folks a little bit of your background and what you're doing currently?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks so much for having me. So currently, I'm actually just advising with my previous company, Hamptons Fit, but going kind of way back from there. At the very start of my journey, I started back in 2006 in retail. Worked my way up as a assistant store manager and store manager for GNC and Vitamin Shop stores down in Southwest Florida. Took a little bit of a pivot into retail operations. Really wanted to get to know kind of like the engine that sort of ran everything. So I landed in asset protection and investigations, where I actually started with Hyatt Hotels. Got to know kind of more of the operations side from the hospitality industry. And then I actually transitioned into retail, where I started working for Nordstrom as a corporate investigator, where I was really kind of dabbling more into internal investigations, fraud, external theft, organized retail, crime rings, things like that. So working very heavily with law enforcement. And then I took a promotion with Victoria's Secret stores, where I was managing the entire Northeast for asset protection out of the global flagship in New York City. Essentially doing the same thing, just overseeing a lot more product, a lot more employees, and a lot more theft, unfortunately. And then it was actually from there, battled some mental health related issues, from the job, just things that I was experiencing, things that I was seeing, and took a little bit of a pivot and kind of went back to my roots of teaching tennis. I had a very big history in, as an elite background in tennis and soccer. So I kind of needed a little bit more of a community-centric environment, more positivity, things like that. So for the next couple of years, I started teaching down in Southwest Florida, my hometown, private clubs, and that's essentially where I started kind of managing the accounts at our club. Working on renewals, working on deeper relationships, nurturing those relationships, upselling, building out programs. And it really kind of got me heavily invested in sales and, kind of in that environment. But, also to kind of take a step back from there, it also kind of led me to an entrepreneurial type of environment, because I was really managing the club's business, but also my personal business. So it was actually from there that a company called Hamptons Fit, a startup here in the Hamptons, New York, kind of came knocking. And, it was just a one-person show, CEO and founder, early stage bootstrap company. Asked me if I wanted to come join and kind of be a part of the growth. They were seeing pretty heavy growth, for 2 years in, and just kind of help out with closing sales and nurturing relationships, kind of doing the same thing, but also being able to teach a little bit of tennis. So my partner and I, we decided to uproot our lives from Florida and kind of take this journey together. And this is actually where I've been for the last 3 years, I would say now. Through the height of the pandemic, saw explosive growth. Started off as just really working sales and closing inbound business and upselling, cross-selling into different categories and whatnot. But then I kind of moved into a leadership role, where I took in responsibility overseeing all of sales, CS, and also essentially a co-founder position with the company. And then really from there, I just decided to kind of take a step back as of lately, and now just really running my own business full on in terms of teaching tennis out here in the Hamptons, taking on a lot of these accounts, and just kind of enjoying life right now, looking for the next step.
Awesome. So I think what's so interesting, there's that Daniel Pink book, and I think you kind of embody this concept of, everyone, whether they realize it or not, is in sales, but you actually, I think came to that realization sooner than a lot of people do. And you took this journey, and you talked about you're in corporate security, making sure people aren't stealing underwear out of Victoria's Secret. And you kind of said, you had some mental health challenges, and you went through this journey where you decided to, get back to something you loved, right? Get back to tennis, be in the outdoors, but then you took a sales approach. Talk a little bit about like what you started to figure out and what the opportunities were and how that differentiated you from like other tennis pros, because I guarantee you most tennis pros are not thinking about like, here's my sales funnel and here's how I'm going to end up with folks. But it sounds like that's actually part of what you did.
Yeah, completely different sides of the world. Protecting assets, protecting employees, protecting buildings, and essentially working with people that are involved in criminal activity, if you will, to going to a environment where people are trying to just live their best lives, right? They join a private country club, they're looking to play tennis, engage in different activities. It was up to us really to make sure that we provided that right type of environment, right? Provided a community type of environment, which we'll get into a little bit later, involved in with LinkedIn. But it was really not only nurturing the membership, but it was also taking on an approach of kind of sourcing our own clientele as well. So building out our program, and especially with my junior program, I had to find a lot of my own leads. I had to go through social selling. I had to join Facebook groups. I had to market myself on Instagram in order to kind of get myself out there. So I built out a lot of these channels to really promote my services, promote what it is that I did, and to really drive business into the organization, drive new memberships, but then also to kind of pad my wallet a little bit, right? So that was a big part of it. It's really all just about the relationship building approach and making sure that you know how to connect with your base, connect with people that are looking for these services, understand what it is that they're looking for. I could tell you, as a tennis professional, not every client is the same. So it's really understanding on a deeper level pain points, right? One person may need one type of advice, another person may need something completely different, or one person may be able to work off of this strategy and another person's going to be completely different. So it's really taking a very nuanced approach into servicing these clients and really understanding, hey, how can we provide the most amount of value to the people that we have? So very involved.
Yeah, and I just got to say again, I think so many service providers are not doing that type of analysis. They're not figuring that out. So whether it's through conversations or a questionnaire, but and it's not just, hey, someone need more work on volleying than they do on their backhand, right? But you're actually digging into why are they doing this, and how did you was that an iterative process that you just slowly discovered over time, or was there just a day where you're like, man, what I'm doing is not working, I need to dig deeper? How did that come about?
Do you mean in terms of teaching an actual
In
client?
terms of figuring out this process that you had for doing, discovery and then customizing, you're tailoring your sales solution, right? Here's the offering based on what people need. Was that just like you came in doing that, or did you kind of discover that because you're like, hey man, I'm here for an 8-hour day at the tennis club and I've got 2 hours booked. And so 6 hours, I'm figuring out how I can drive more customers. What was that part of it? How did that part look? How'd you
Yeah,
get?
it's a little bit of both. A little bit of it is intuitive, but a lot of it is iterative, right? So we're really kind of going out there with planning, with strategy, things like that, deep diving into what it is that our clients need. But those things change over time, right? It's just like any other process in sales. Needs change. Problems arise. We need to be nimble, and we need to be able to take a different approach. We need to pivot at times, right? Or in the process of fixing one problem, another problem just kind of pops up, and we need to kind of pivot and to address those needs right off the bat. So that's really a big part of it. And then kind of looking at how we find our clients. Yeah, that's another part of it as well. Very iterative. We have to kind of look at, okay, where are our clients living? Are we sourcing junior players? If that's the case, then we need to make sure that we're on Instagram, and TikTok was really just kind of coming into its own at that time. So it's kind of looking at, all right, where are the kids living? TikTok, Instagram. Where are the parents living? Parents are living more on Facebook, places like that. And of course, they're the decision makers, right? But it's kind of a double-edged sword there, because if you get the kids on board, then naturally you're probably gonna get the parents on board as well. So and then of course there's working with strictly adults. So there's a lot that kind of goes into the process, into the strategy of how we kind of source these leads, how we find them, how we kind of move them through, and get them to become long-term clients.
And so you taking this really strategic approach, which, Bjorn on the next court over, who's got, great tips on the wrist action and stuff like that. I'm guessing he probably wasn't doing that. What did that mean for you in terms of how you were doing versus, just from a business standpoint, the fact that you took the time to study and question and give thought to, hey, the younger players they're on Instagram, but their parents are probably somewhere else. So where am I going to spend my time? Where am I going to spend the focus? What did that translate into business results for you compared to like the other folks that you worked with?
Yeah. Well, taking that approach, I mean, over the 2 years at a private club, I built the second largest junior program in Southwest Florida. And for a private club that wasn't just a junior academy, this was a member-owned club, right? So being in that kind of environment and to build that kind of club is huge. I mean, we got all kinds of recognition, and we had college players from Florida Gulf Coast University that wanted to teach with me, things like that, and kind of be a part of that process. But the business was huge. I mean, it became just as far as billing, I became the highest biller in the club's previous 20 years history. So that was a huge feather in the cap for me. But it was definitely more of a, hey, look at the value that I was able to provide. That was the biggest thing. Money is one thing, but being able to provide a service and provide value to not only these kids, but their parents, and see them kind of move through the stages of growth is, you can't put a price on that, and that was the biggest part.
Yep. No, and when I talk about this concept of selling bliss, I think there are multiple ways it can be interpreted, but part of it is like, hey, when your funnel is full, when you're stacked, when you're not having to worry about like, hey, I've got these empty times, I imagine like the job, the actual tennis lessons become a lot more enjoyable for you. And two, I'm guessing the people you are working with, because you are so knowledgeable, because you brought the approach, that you probably saw an increase in customer satisfaction as well. That did you experience that? And what was it like on the customer side? What sort of feedback did you get from them?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like I said, it was huge growth. The club, started to get on the map because nobody was ever really doing this before at this particular club. I mean, you got to remember at private country clubs, the average age might be, for especially Southwest Florida, 68, 70 years old, right? So this is a huge deal, where members like to see a big junior program. It starts to get the club more recognition, and of course, if you're doing a great job, you're getting the customer feedback as well, which is essentially the parents. And that's where, we put out surveys. We got all kinds of feedback, from parents, reviews, things like that were really just exponential in our ability to keep scaling, which was unbelievable. I mean, it was tremendous growth there.
And so then you took that and you went to the Hamptons, and then you got even more entrepreneurial. What was the next step in the journey?
Yeah, the next step was this company, the startup called Hamptons Fit, and I was taking a huge gamble. I went from a 6-figure teaching role, which is pretty significant in a private club, and being able to kind of manage my own schedule and pick my clients as I wanted, and going up here, it was just like I didn't really know what was going to happen. Right? It's a bootstrap company. It could have closed in 6 months. Who knew? But it was really just more of that adventure, being able to say, you know what, let's try working with a different type of clientele. Let's kind of have a multifaceted role, which is a closing role in sales, which is what I really wanted to do, but also be able to teach clients as well. I mean, to me, it was like, this is the perfect storm, right? Go up here, teach a different type of client, teach our clients at their own residences, which is vastly different from what I was used to doing. All of our clients have their own tennis courts and things like that. But it was also being able to work in a multi-sport company, which is, at the time when I started with Hamptons Fit, we were only doing about 4 different sports. We were doing tennis, soccer, yoga, and swim. Those were our 4 components. Over time, we evolved into 9 different categories of sports, 55 different trainers and coaches, and I was able to get into a more full-time sales and CS type of capacity within Hamptons Fit, where I was able to work on nurturing the relationships, upselling, providing deeper value, and being able to do the things that I really wanted to leverage a little bit more in my career, as opposed to just strictly teaching. So it was a huge opportunity for me.
And one of the things I loved is you shared on LinkedIn, and you mentioned this a minute ago, identifying people who had their own tennis courts. And you did something that I think, I'm guessing you were the only company around in the Hamptons that was doing this approach, but what did you do with Google Maps, and how was that part of your sales process?
Yeah, definitely. So first of all, thanks for noticing that. That was I remember that content that I put out. This was an approach. I mean, in a bootstrap startup like this, no funding, no concrete playbook. We're kind of just working off of, hey, trial and error. Let's see what works. Let's iterate. Let's test different things. So I kind of looked at it like, okay, we were in a stage of closing a ton of inbound, right? I moved up there at the start of the pandemic. People were moving out to the Hamptons from New York City. So we were seeing growth that was just out of control, tons of inbound. But we finally got to a point where it's like, okay, well, we need to find a little bit more from an outbound approach. How do we do this? So I kind of just looked at it. I was hopping on Google Maps, and I looked at kind of like their 3D aerial footage, where you can kind of like look into people's homes and see what they have, see the different amenities that they have at the house. And you can see their tennis court, their basketball court. You can see if they have a pool. And, we had a very specific ICP. We don't just work with anybody who has a tennis court. We work with a very niche type of client. mostly from the C-suite, mostly founders, celebrities, things like that. So I jumped on Google Maps. I was able to kind of see which homes in this particular area had these amenities that we were looking for. And, I was able to prospect and source, a collective of about 3,500 different residences. I was able to cross-reference their addresses through Zillow in case I wasn't able to pull it from Google Maps. And we were able to do a direct marketing campaign specifically to these residences. So we took down all of their addresses, put them into our Excel spreadsheet, and was able to send them out our very first marketing campaign where we were able to convert about 12% right off the bat, first run. We did get a lot of feedback from, some of these clients are now clients that said, oh, I saw you once before, and I'm so glad that I got this, this flyer about your business. This is awesome. Downloaded our app, was able to get fully engaged, and we were able to start to close sales and start to nurture those relationships. So that was huge in itself, just for our growth from an outbound strategy.
Yeah, pretty amazing. And you started talking about, I don't know how I got connected, how I start, how you got on my radar, tennis pro, tennis entrepreneur, fitness entrepreneur in the Hamptons. I'm out here in California, but I kept seeing you put out this great content, and I think I started following you, and then we started, commenting on each other's stuff. But what made you decide to start chronicling this journey on LinkedIn? And what did you see from doing that?
Yeah, appreciate you asking. So I think, LinkedIn, we kind of noticed that LinkedIn wasn't a huge growth driver in terms of for business to really get our clients. Our clients are very much in a specific circle, very much referral based and things like that. But what I did want to do was I wanted to get on LinkedIn and really just kind of start talking about the things that I've been through, right? I didn't want to talk about just sales. I didn't want to talk about just tennis. I didn't want to talk about, just kind of the same old boring stuff. I really wanted to mostly just kind of discuss, a little bit more about my life and how I kind of came about through this journey and the things that I've been doing and my experience as an entrepreneur, as a co-founder, and just kind of shed some light, empower people to really learn, maybe people that are 1 to 2 steps behind me, that I could shed a little bit of light and kind of be a resource for some folks, right? And that was really just, a trial and error type of thing as well. I just wanted to test and iterate and, see what landed with people, and hopefully meet more folks that were in the sales orbit that I wanted to kind of dive into a little bit deeper.
Yeah. And now you've made yet another transition. You had this great run at Hamptons Fit. What are you doing next?
Yeah. So I actually, I'm kind of wrapping up with Hamptons Fit. I still kind of stay on a little bit more to advise. I am still a part owner of the company, but I'm looking to actually get into another opportunity in terms of in sales or CS. That's really my bread and butter. That's where I really like to shine. I really like to nurture the relationships. I did that very often in Hamptons Fit, and a lot of our growth was really from expansions and upsells and cross sells. So, we did a really great job with pivoting our business from not only a B2C segment, but we also were able to pivot into a B2B segment as well. So I was able to really get more of that experience in both. And being that our platform is a SaaS-enabled platform, it kind of gave me that experience as well, to where Hamptons Fit was able to manage all back office, billing and payments and scheduling, but we were also able to work on the front end as well in terms of our training. So it really kind of gave me a very holistic view in terms of SaaS, B2B, B2C. So now I'm really just kind of looking more for a sales or CS type of role where I can continue to build, continue to help grow an organization. And maybe it's an early stage startup, or maybe it's an organization that's already a little bit more established. But that's really where my heart is set right now, and to
Yeah.
be able to just teach on the side.
And I just, so hey, maybe it's someone who's viewing this right now or listening to this right now who's going to be the one lucky enough to bring you on board. But I just have to say, like, when I hear your journey and what you've done, it just gives such confidence. Like, I would have no qualms about hiring you. I'd be so excited to hire you because you've had this track record of success, and you've also been so thoughtful and analytical and just forward thinking, innovative in your journey. And I think that sets you up so well. What would you say to someone who's like in a SaaS AE role or a SaaS customer success role, and maybe they're not, having the success that they want yet? If you were them, how would you think about, their own book of business, and what are the tools? Where would you go first in terms of to have greater success? What would your approach and advice be?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be the first to say I don't know it all. That's for sure. Especially some of these SDRs and AEs that are out there. I learn a ton from them. There's folks out there that are in strategic AE roles, or even in founding BDR roles that absolutely blow me away in terms of outbound, and I love learning from them. But the one thing that I will say is, really deep dive and get to know the services, get to know your customer, get to know what industry you're in. I'll share a little funny story real quick. I just recently found out that Hamptons Fit was actually a SaaS-enabled marketplace. I didn't even really know that. I knew what we did and how we helped our customers. I didn't even know what SaaS meant, right? So I only learned this about a year ago, and I didn't even know what the acronym stood for. So really get to know what it is that your product is, the features, but really understand what your customer pain points are. I will say that LinkedIn is probably the number one tool that I will always recommend. Ever since I started this journey a little over a year ago on LinkedIn and sharing my story, I think that just opens so many more doors. It allows people to kind of understand your journey. It allows you to be vulnerable with people and to share kind of what you've been through. And I think ultimately that there's a direct correlation to business. So being able to do that, being able to be vulnerable to a community, helps you to also do that same thing with your customer. And that's what customers want at the end of the day. They want honesty. They want you to be real. They don't want to be sold to, right? So that's something that I really found to be huge in my growth journey.
I think what's so cool is that, a lot of the tenets of what are successful sales, SaaS salespeople and SaaS CSMs, you went on this journey and discovered almost like on your own all these types of things before you even knew what SaaS was. But when we talk about, digging deep with customers and not treating all customers the same, but having a tailored solution based on, here's what I found with other customers. Let me ask you, let me validate, let me do this great discovery so I can have an offering that is a fit for you, or maybe it's not, in which case let me send you somewhere else. Like, you've done all these things, but so much of it sounds like it was trial and error and you figuring things out. But are there people who, were there sales books or blogs or videos that really influenced you, or was it mostly just the trial and error? How did you get here?
Yeah, great question. I will say I've always learned by doing, and that's essentially what I did. It was a lot of trial and error and learning from my mistakes, and doing things one way, maybe gaining a little bit of traction and saying, okay, we hit a brick wall, we need to pivot a little bit. It wasn't until it wasn't until my journey on LinkedIn that I really started to learn from folks that were in sales and really learn playbooks and specific processes and a more nuanced approach to doing these things. I kind of learned it the hard way, just by doing. And you know what? I kind of take pride in that. I take pride in just being able to figure it out and being a doer and not really having to rely on books and things like that. But a couple people I will shout out that I did start to learn from pretty significantly. Salman Mohideen over at Asana, started to really learn what he does as a strategic AE and work deals and things like that. And Anthony Natoli and a couple other folks like Scott Leese, who I became friends with and learned an absolute ton of information from. Even grabbed his book, when I first started on this journey. So there were things that, in my personal journey, it was really just learning by doing and trial and error. Now it's a little bit more of a tailored approach and kind of, learning from other folks who have been here and how can I make my life a little bit easier, a little bit simpler by kind of following in their footsteps. So yeah, I would say it's a little bit of both.
Yep. And, I think it's so important for people to figure out like their own personal learning style and what works for them. Like I'm a huge book reader. And so like Jeb Blount and Challenger Sale and even things like Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People, like that's had a big impact on me. But you've kind of gone about it a different way of trial and error. And now you're just accentuating it and accelerating it. And I think that's so cool. And that's why I was so excited to have you on here and chat with you. But, I've got some other big important questions for you, including greatest tennis player of all time. You got your big three who are kind of all winding down. You've got Serena Williams, who just recently retired. You've got Steffi Graf. You've got your Martina Navratilovas and Rod Lavers, all Sampras, Agassi, so many great tennis players. In your mind, who's the greatest tennis player of all time?
Oh man, that's putting me on the spot here. Growing up, it was always Pete Sampras, right? Now I have to say Rafael Nadal. That's that's my go-to, that's my favorite. But I will say the future is looking like it's Carlos Alcaraz. That's the man to watch.
All right. You heard it here first. And yeah, if I had to pick like one person to bet on, Nadal playing on clay at the French Open. I don't think when he's healthy and at the peak, guy was pretty close to unbeatable. So and last question, if folks want to follow you, is it Instagram, is it YouTube, or is it all happening on LinkedIn? How can people keep up with you and hear the latest tips?
Yeah, I'm super active on LinkedIn. I try to create content at least 2 to 3 times a week. But I love to dive into the comments, love to get active with people and engage. That's where I'm at most of my time. I do have a Instagram handle as well as a Twitter handle as well. You can find me by my first and last name. And but you can catch me on either one of those.
LinkedIn's where it's at. All right. Well, Doug, hey man, it has been awesome having you. Keep up the great work. Cannot wait to see what's next in the journey. Thank you so much, my friend.
Thanks so much for having me, Brian. Really appreciate it.